Bet on Bears fans, another edition of the Chicago Bears podcast coming your way. Pat the designer, Jason McKie in the building, full claw showing on BJ Day. J Mack, is that we got a full claw on BJ Day? Take that for what you will. Ben Johnson is here, and he got his opening press conference. I was in attendance at it. It was a great time. It feels like a new energy in the building. Chicago's on my heels about the question and how it came out that I asked. So it's a great day all the way around, J-Mac. We got so much to talk about on this podcast. First things first, how are you, my friend?
Doing good. It's recruiting season, so I've met with about 5 coaches already. Had an opportunity to meet with some good coaches, talk football. Obviously got a chance to listen to Ben Johnson's press conference. So the excitement is real here in Chicago. You know, I'm excited about all the possibilities in terms of how Ben will, bring this thing together, how this offense is going to look, how all these phases are going to look, with this new look Chicago Bears team that we'll see next season. So we also got a special guest joining us to break it all down. I'm real excited about our guest. You've seen him on NFL Network. You've seen him, on the fantasy football show that they have on NFL Network as well. I've been a big fan of his in the media, so it's a privilege and an honor for us to have him on our show today, Pat.
Absolutely, man. Let's get straight into it because, you're talking about a guy who, when you talk about football passion, you talk about Bears fan passion, there is nobody more passionate than Adam Rank. That is who we are welcoming in to the show today. He is keeping the legacy of Mike Ditka alive, in which no matter what team is picked, he's got Chicago Bears represented in the media. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome in fantasy football guru and diehard Bears fan, Adam Rankin, to the Chicago Bears podcast.
Yes, sir.
Adam, what's going on, my guy?
You guys are too kind. Thank you so much. I admire both of you. And to hear those kind words, it really does mean a lot. And I appreciate it because, when you stick your neck out there and you're planting the flag for one team in a national TV show, and I know that we shouldn't show our cards and, hey, will you wear, no, I will do, we did a thing a couple of weeks ago where they're like, hey, you lost this contest where somebody's going to pick out your wardrobe. And I'm thinking okay, I wear a lot of weird stuff, especially on Good Morning Football. I don't care. And then I was like, oh, criminy. Are you guys going to make me, I'll get whatever. And then they pull out an Aaron Rodgers Packers jersey. And I'm like, I throw it on the ground. I actually unzipped it because it was in a garment bag and I threw it. And the guy goes and picks it up and they pull it out because the person's like, pull it out. And I again, not wearing this. And I toss it on the ground or whatever. And so, you never know. So after the show, I said, hey, I go, just so everybody's good. You guys knew there was no chance of me wearing that. They're like, we planned on that. Yeah, we would have been shocked had you put that on. I'm like, okay, good. I'm like, because I guess I could have been risking my job right there, but I'll die for the brand, so to speak. So it is nice. So a long story to a short point. I appreciate you guys and I appreciate the support. And you know what? The people that matter to you, their opinions matter. So if Pat the designer and J Mack are sitting here, Jason especially, no disrespect. But when a former player, you're good, because you'll run into people like Corey or AJ Brown, some guy, you're really, oh God, one time I was getting ready to interview David Montgomery when he was playing with the Bears. And he's like, I've always wanted to meet you. And I'm like, what? Yeah. He goes, yeah. I'm like, stop it. He's like, no, I really appreciate you never drag us or any of this stuff. And I'm like, dude, all the time, don't worry about me. Even when he's in Detroit, I've never said a bad word about him when he's been in Detroit. Same thing with Darnell. I won't say anything bad about I'm still on board with him. So if you play for the Bears, even if you're passing through town, I got your back and I appreciate it. And again, I appreciate you guys having me on. Sorry, that was way long. I've noticed I've already talked for 30 minutes. Okay, Rank, time to go. You were
Adam,
your passion kept it real. Through.
Yeah, Adam's always kept it real, man. I've been a fan because, like you said, you stay true to your team. And I've watched you on Good Morning Football during them segments. And I always wondered, what's Adam going to do? Yes, he did exactly what a diehard fan would do. And, you bring such a great, clear perspective and you're passionate about your team. And as a former player, we appreciate that. So you've been a guy that's been one to build up, but you're honest and you ask the hard questions and, you bring criticism when necessary. So, we appreciate you, man, and we're looking forward to dig into the segment with you about Ben Johnson. I know that's the hot topic, and My first question is, when you found out that the Bears finally pulled the trigger and they got the guy that they wanted to hire, in terms of what you've seen from Ben Johnson in Detroit and what you think he'll do here in Chicago, what do you think is his biggest attribute that he brings here to the Chicago Bears?
I think there's an intensity that was missing with the last coaching staff. And I think that a lot of the things that I've heard about Ben Johnson over the last couple of days is how intense he is. One of my colleagues was telling me like, hey, the reason that I'm curious to see how this works out in Chicago is because, if you ever watch Jared Goff during a game, like there'll be times where he's telling Ben Johnson to calm down because he's just so fired up and so intense. He's like, I don't know if Caleb can handle that. And I'm like, be serious. You don't know if Caleb can handle it. Caleb is one of the coolest guys around, like as a chill bra kind of guy. Like I think Caleb can handle it, which is fair. But he brings an intensity. He brings some creativity. And again, like I've seen numerous press conferences, right? We win the offseason, blah, blah, blah. I understand these criticisms. I understand fans of opposing teams saying this kind of stuff. Like, okay, that's fair. Like we have not done a lot since 85. Like I get it. Okay. I understand where this is coming from. Let me just tell you though, when Ben Johnson and you see the obligatory, like the introduction yesterday and everything, but what stood out to me today is number one, pointing out Caleb Williams in the front row and saying, listen, I've wanted to work with you. You're why I am here, but it's not just on you, which number one, you're like, yes, I love that aspect of it. It's just not on the quarterback. There are a lot of things that make a quarterback successful. Ben Johnson understands this, so he's got that going for him. Also, he was talking about like just really diving down and like tailoring the offense for Caleb Williams.
Yeah.
He even said like what we saw in Detroit, we might not see here. We're going to go with the personnel that are on this team and what makes these guys successful. Amon-Ra St. Brown and DJ Moore are not the same player, and you get into these situations where a guy joins a team and you're like, well, this is going to be his Justin Jefferson, or this is going to be his Cooper Kupp or anything like that. He knows. And he goes out there and he's saying like, I'm going to tailor this towards you. And I'm going to do this to make our players better, not trying to make somebody else better. And by the way, I want to get, I'm sure we'll cover this too, but like, he's also coming into this. Every time we talk about this, like he was coaching Jared Goff, and no disrespect to Jared Goff, who's a former number 1 overall pick, but he is a journeyman who was traded away by the Rams, who became a somewhat elite level quarterback over the last couple of seasons because of Ben Johnson. This is not a situation where you were working with Peyton Manning or you were working with Tom Brady or Patrick Mahomes, and then you're going someplace else to work with. No, he was working with Jared Goff. And again, no disrespect. I guess there is a disrespect level.
There's some disrespect in there. A little bit.
A little bit. Okay, you're not Tom Brady. I would tell that to Jared Goff. I would tell that to his face. Like if I saw the guy who fronts the hold steady, I'd be like, you know what? You might not be as popular as Eddie Vedder. And I think that's a fair statement to say, and they should probably agree with that. Listen, as somebody who does stand-up comedy, if somebody said to me like, hey, you're not as funny as Bill Burr, I'd be like, yeah, okay, that's fair. And I would move on with my life. I understand. I understand where my lot in life is, where I am on the marquee. I am not the headliner. That's fine. But I think that's a big thing. Like I remember because somebody was bringing up Adam Gase, and I said Adam Gase's calling card was that he worked with Peyton Manning and Jay Cutler. And I'm like, okay, so you're talking about a guy who worked with arguably the greatest quarterback of all time and also Peyton Manning. And that's what made him great. Like that is the thing. That's a long setup for a dumb joke. But
J-Mac, your thoughts on that? Never mind, don't worry about that. We won't get into that. No, listen, Adam, I feel you, dude. Like I take the Jared Goff, what he turned Jared Goff into, and I know now that we're here, people forget it. But Jared Goff was Sam Darnold of this season. Yeah. That's what he was for that team. When you watch, my favorite thing about Jared Goff was you knew if the run game was shut down that he wasn't going to be an elite quarterback that day. And the Bears were great at shutting the run game down every time we played the Rams. And so Jared Goff was really never a great quarterback against us. Guess what he had out there in Detroit that Ben Johnson realized? He says, yo, this kid needs a run game to look elite. Not only are we going to sign David Montgomery, let's go draft a running back. And when everybody laughed at the Lions for that, and I was one of them, I still wouldn't draft a running back. I wouldn't follow that path. but you're doing that for your quarterback because that's what your quarterback needs to be successful. What'd you take away from today in the press conference when you heard him go out there and basically say, how I took it was like, we will throw this entire playbook away and build a new one for Caleb Williams for whatever works best for him.
100%. And that's the best way to approach it. And the best way to get the most out of your quarterback is go out there and do what makes him successful. It was funny though, because on Monday night I was doing a show and somebody was talking about it, hey, did they not, I thought they got away from the run a little bit too much against the Commanders or whatever. And I'm like, they had 500 yards. They scored 31 points. How do you come away from that game and be like, yeah, Ben Johnson could have done a better job. He scored 31 points.
Like, he didn't play defense. He had to play defense too.
Take that to Aaron Glenn's press conference. I don't want to hear it for Ben Johnson. But I do love the fact that we're going to explore what Caleb Williams does well, because I was sitting, and this has been the copium that you hear from people. So yesterday, I was on the practice range at the golf course here locally, and there was a guy with a bunch of Packers head covers on his thing, talking to a guy who had a USC, bag, and they're like, yeah, you take a guy who's the most disciplined with a guy who plays off schedule and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, you know what? I didn't say anything. I just let them do their thing. But you look at what Ben Johnson does is that he understood who Jared Goff was and what you could have Jared, like you could not use the same playbook that Patrick Mahomes has or Jaden Daniels or somebody and have Jared Goff run that. You had to have a playbook that was specific as to what you were talking about. Run the football, get rid of it as quickly as possible. Don't let this person improvise. But I think what we've seen out of Ben Johnson with the creativity is that he is going to find a way to use Caleb's skill set to the best of his ability. Use that off-schedule stuff. Like it's not that Caleb needs to work into Ben's system. It's Ben's got to find a system that works for Caleb. That's why he's brought in. Yes. That's why he is here to go out there and tailor this offense to him. He's not coming in and being like, listen, you get this. Like Jared Goff is like old school NES. You got two buttons and you got your little thing. And then, Caleb's going to be the Xbox controller where you got a lot more buttons to work with and some triggers and everything like that. A lot more creativity
every now and then to throw the football away.
Right? Yeah. So we got the hit stick. Like we got a lot of things going on. So that's what I love about Ben Johnson. And I think that's what they did. And I thought that they went out there and they took the guy to get the most out of their quarterback, which is exactly what we were asking for.
Yeah, and I want to talk about, you're talking about him being able to be adaptable in terms of his personnel, in terms of schematically, the playbook, and all those good things. I think one of the biggest takeaways that I took from this press conference, and I'll get your opinion here in a second, was how the alignment was in terms of him and Ryan Poles working together to build this roster, right? And so many times we've seen, a head coach here not have complete control over how he wants his roster to be, constructed. And I think that was a big part of him coming here to Chicago is having that alignment in terms of how he wants to build his team, not just on offense, but you heard him talk about how he'll be involved in special teams. He'll be involved in the defense. How refreshing was that for you, Adam, to hear that he kept reiterating that word alignment, him and Poles working together hand in hand? How refreshing was that for you?
Yeah, because there were so many people who thought that Ryan Poles needed to be fired in order for this to happen. Yeah. When absolutely that was not the case at all, which again should let you know about reporting and things like that, because clearly Ben Johnson does not have a problem with Ryan Poles, wanted to be here because of Ryan Poles. And as I listened to the press conference, I also thought this too, is that I feel like if they would have fired Matt Eberflus last season, that Ben Johnson would have been the head coach and it wouldn't have been an issue and he would have came in here and hit the ground running. But when Eberflus was retained, I don't know if this is something that you just know because you coach against the Bears. You're like, yeah, this guy's not going to last. Like this job's going to be open next year, so I'll just wait. Like he turned down the Commanders and other teams. Like, no, I'm going to wait because I have a feeling it's like when you were in high school and a girl that you liked was going out with a guy that you knew was garbage, and you're like, yeah, they're going to break up soon. So I'm not going to ask this girl out to the prom yet because I know she's probably going to be single here in a couple of weeks. So that's
Adam,
pretty
stop
much
giving the secrets away, dog. You giving the secrets away, Adam.
So that's what. So
That's
Ben
a go-to
Johnson,
move.
I know that was the thing. Like, hey, I was the supportive friend, the shoulder to cry on.
Yeah.
And I guess that's what Ben Johnson was. And it was the alignment. And really, I think that ultimately is that he wanted to make sure that Kevin Warren and the McCaskey family was not going to be interfering, that this was Ryan Poles. And like now when you look back, it's kind of like when you watch a series, like when you watch, I just finished watching Andor again on the Disney Plus network, caught a couple of things I didn't notice the first time.
Yeah.
I think now when you look at Kevin Warren saying like, hey, Ryan Poles, like I'm here, but like Ryan Poles is running the show. The reason he was saying that, it was to let Ben know like, hey, like Ryan Poles is running this. I know that I'm here. I'm going to make sure everything's okay. Kevin, I thought to me was the guy that was convincing the McCaskey family what they needed to do in order to be successful. And if I may take a moment here, to sit here, and I know this is going to be a very unpopular opinion, and I know that I come off like a shill a lot of times, but please, people, if you see George in the parking lot, you have to thank him because you were screaming for him to sell the team. And I said this to Greg Braggs and all these guys, like, you know what? The McCaskey family is getting a bad rap because like there's a lot of family-owned teams in this league that did not do anything for years. And then, all of a sudden you get the right coach and right quarterback and, you're the best family in football. The Hunt family went from Super Bowl 5 to Super Bowl 55 without winning a title. But now all of a sudden they're the standard bearer. Why? Oh, because they hired Andy Reid and they drafted Patrick Mahomes. The Lions were not that. The Ford family did not sell the team. And all of a sudden, they were the most celebrated. And they're like, it was Sheila. I'm like, stop it. Sheila was the one who came in and turned it. No, Dan Campbell and Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn turned that thing around. So the McCaskey family went out there, and we've seen this over the last number of years. Ever since Ryan Poles was hired, they added the assistant GM, Ian Cunningham. That's something they had never done before. They brought in Kevin Warren, not necessarily to meddle into football operations, but to get a stadium built somewhere. And then when Kevin Warren goes up to them and says, listen, if you want your quarterback to be successful, we need to spend $14 million to bring in this coach. And George McCaskey said, I'm going to do it. So again, he heard it. He understood it. He understood the assignment and he went out and did it. So regardless of how this finishes and whatever, and this is another thing too, whenever you're like, well, it's the Bears organization. You're right. The Bears organization 10 years ago would have blown this. We would have Mike McCarthy as our coach if this was 10 years ago.
Aaron Glenn. We would have had Aaron Glenn.
Yeah.
No, Aaron Glenn's optimistic. I think Brian Flores would.
And he would have got one clap.
Flores. We would have had Flores.
Yeah.
Exactly.
We would have Flores.
Flores would have got 2 claps as he walked into the building when they announced him. It would have been, a little golf clap.
So there is good reason to believe that this could absolutely be different, even though I know it's the Bears and we've been here before and we've won the offseason previously. There are reasons why this is different, and it's starting, and we just need to recognize that. Again, like it's not a guarantee. It's not a guarantee that it's going to be successful, but there is a reason why there's more optimism and why Bears fans should actually be believing instead of trying to convince themselves to believe.
No, yeah, I said this yesterday on the Breeze, and we talked about it on the radio, that you have to give. I understand things haven't been perfect. I understand. I wouldn't have drafted a punter in the 4th round, right? It makes it's asinine.
I still like that move. I still sort of like that.
Not when I see Bucky Irving running for 150 yards every rip. You know what I mean? Like I wouldn't have gone that way. There's things I wouldn't have done that Ryan Poles did. But this part, and I think that's the part where we look at everything in totality and say, well, this is why he's bad. If you wanted Ben Johnson, this front office put together the perfect culmination of things for you to do that. Not only Ryan Poles going out and making the pitch, not only Ryan Poles going out and enticing Ben to want to be here and putting together, dare you say, a good enough situation where he looks at the roster and goes, that's a roster I want to be a part of. But also, Kevin Warren changed the McCaskey's mind. Like, that should not be understated. J-Mac, you played here. You know they have done things the same way a long time. And the report is that the number made George uncomfortable, and he signed the check. Adam, you've been a fan here for a long time as well. we've never seen something that made the McCaskies uncomfortable get done here in Chicago.
You know, and again, I think that a big reason why Matt Eberflus survived last season was because of the McCaskies being uncomfortable. And if you want to sit there and be like, hey, listen, they meddle, and you're like, okay, that's understandable. They own this team. It's their money. They got to be comfortable with what they're doing. It was after 2 years. And if they felt strongly enough about Eberflus, hey, you know what? I understand. And in a sense, they got away with it because Ben Johnson was willing to wait. So kudos to Ben Johnson. But again, I want to give them credit, though, because they did understand it. And they did understand the way that football works in 2025. And it makes George very uncomfortable. This is a very big purchase. It's, thankfully my daughter's 9. I'm not going to have to worry about purchasing a car for her for a number of years, but still there are going to be uncomfortable things that you're going to have to do. And I think that's what happened here with George. And he went out there and God bless him. Like, he made the move. He did it. There's nothing like for everything that you say about them or people were upset about.
Yeah.
And if fans want to take a victory lap and they're like, hey, listen, us chanting sell the team is what pushed them. And like, if you want to believe that, that's fair.
Sure.
Take your victory lap, but like, we're here. He did it. He understood. Message was received. So for everybody who was like, I'm tired of George walking through the parking lot. Yeah. But like, he did that. He did that and he listened. Like, what more do you want? And again, like, it's refreshing to see the Bears finally embrace modern football, even though it took them a little bit of time to get there. We're here now.
You're not talking about all those people, Adam, that can't sell the team, but then see George in the parking lot and go, Mr. McCaskey, pleasure to meet you. Love
my God, yeah.
That's everybody in the stands.
Right?
You got to give Kevin Warren some love, too. He put up the Kung Fu grip on the checkbook from George now to make it happen. So when I see Kevin, like I always do on the road, I'm going to give him a fist bump. Hey, man, appreciate you. I see what you did there.
Very different.
But I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry. Hold on. Yeah, I do want to focus. I do give Kevin Warren a lot of credit. Mm-hmm. And again, that goes to stuff that the McCaskies have done over the last number of years to really improve the football operations of this team. And when you get rid of Ted and you bring in Kevin Warren, who is a respected person in NFL circles, a guy who is very instrumental in that beautiful stadium in Minneapolis, there is a reason why he was brought in here, and now we're seeing why. So yes, Kevin Warren deserves an absolute ton of credit, as does everybody else.
Yeah, I think too, the next order of business for Coach Johnson is obviously hiring a staff. And he said he wanted to get to that as soon as he was done with the press conference. And I think, a hot name that's been brought up, Hank Fraley, who was O-line coach in Detroit, a guy who I played with my rookie year with the Philadelphia Eagles, was a, unheralded player, real smart player, played center. So he's been in the trenches as a player. Obviously, he's coached for a long time in this league. And we know a vital piece of this offense, whatever it's going to look like, is going to be that offensive line. What is your thoughts in terms of the coaching staff? What have you heard? Is that something is that a sure thing, or what are your thoughts on that, Adam?
I feel like the staff, even though they can't announce anything and they have to go through the proper channels. I mean, we saw the charade that had to go on the other day. We're like, oh, geez, like, oh, the Lions lost already? Like, hey, Eddie George, remember when we brought you in a couple of years ago? Do you mind showing up? But again, like, I'm hopeful, and this is always the things, like, Eddie George was now back in the national spotlight again. People are like, oh, he coaches at Tennessee State. Like, oh, I didn't know that. Like, so I hope it's beneficial for Eddie George, because I hope that was perceived as a solid. I mean, he agreed to do it. So, I mean, like, I hope that, Eddie George gets some love and some run, and people appreciate what he was able to do. But I think also, like, Ben Johnson has been cobbling together this group of people where you're like, hey, like, if this happens, do you want to come and join and come aboard? This is the most simplistic way to put this, but I coach AYSO soccer, and I have an all-star team, a U10, my girls, over the last couple of months, being like, hey, by the way, when all-stars, like, you guys are going to try out, like, you start putting that together and be like, hey, and if we stay together, will you be the, like, that kind of stuff. I think there's those kind of things. Like, frankly, Fraley he's been known, like, hey, Ben, when you go to Chicago, like, I'm going to be your OC. Yeah. Like, okay. Yeah. Of course you're going to come in and do that. So I think even the Dennis Allen one might've been new, but I think because Lou Anarumo quickly took the job in Indianapolis leads me to believe that Dennis Allen's coming in for sure. Because I had thought a couple of weeks ago And this is why I always kind of like figured that Ben Johnson was coming in, because once Lou Anarumo was fired in Cincinnati, I'm like, you know what? He's got a connection with Ben Johnson going back to their time in Miami. So I think that's his defensive coordinator. So I think, and so when he was out there and he didn't take the job in Atlanta, or wasn't offered, he might not have been offered, but I'm like, okay, this is how it's shaping up. And then he takes the job in Indianapolis. And I'm like, ooh, that's odd. And then you hear Dennis Allen, you're like, okay, well, he must know that he's coming in here. And if they get Rizzy to come in to be the special teams guy, I really love the way that the staff is coming together. One other guy I would kind of hope comes on board as a no-nonsense guy is Antoine Randall.
Oh yeah.
If he doesn't get to be the offensive coordinator for the Lions, which I hope he gets that gig, but if not, then I hope he comes over to Chicago, because I think that they need more people like that who will stand up to the things that go on. Like when he was undressing Jameson Williams on the sideline for getting into it with Tyreek Stevenson, like that showed a lot to me. Like, because you got to be, of all the people in the league, you're letting Tyreek Stevenson get into your head. The guy who has launched, like the Commanders are in the NFC Championship game because of Tyreek Stevenson, and I will die on that hill. 100%. But like the way we need more of those no nonsense guys, which is one of the reasons why I really like Mike Vrabel to start. Like, we need somebody that make these players accountable. But now, as we learn more about Ben Johnson, I feel like that's going to be the case. But you can't have too many guys out there like him, and I think Antoine Randall would be a fun addition to this team.
Are you like me and you're relishing in the turn that Lions fans have taken on social media and just out here in the real world, where, I mean, dog, like they're creating narratives that I think nobody was saying about the Lions. I saw one guy last year, he's like, oh, all everybody was saying was that the Lions weren't good enough, the coaching staff was nothing, and now y'all want all our coaches. It was like, no one said that. Everybody said we want your coaches because you're great and we love you. Like, what are you talking about? Like, I am taking so much solace in the fact that not only is Ben Johnson leaving, but he may just be twisting the knife a little bit. And he loves everybody up there. He loves all the people up there. Yeah. But the fan base just turned on him within seconds of the game ending.
It really was like when Hulk Hogan joined the NWO at Bash of the Beach in '96.
Yes.
And if this was happening in Detroit, like fans would be littering the field with debris. Like how does he already have his staff together? Like I'm like, dude, come on, like be serious.
You have to have a staff in place to interview, or at least one you're thinking about to interview.
Yeah. Like that was, I'm sure when they were talking about this too, because this is kind of what I got from an insider, which is why I thought that the dominoes were starting to fall. Is like, hey, because somebody had mentioned to me in November when I was saying something about Cincinnati, and they said, be careful because Lou Anarumo can end up being your defensive coordinator if things go the way that I think they're going to go. And you're like, ooh, that's interesting. And that's when I started doing the deep dives of like, who is he connected to and how can I draw it to Ben Johnson? And it wasn't very hard. You just had to go back a couple of years like, oh, Miami. Okay, there they are. But I love it. And I not only love that, but one of the things that I especially loved, I'm sorry, look at me how unprofessional. Why didn't you guys tell me my thing was done? I'm done back here. How unprofessional of me.
What?
No, he's talking about
his cord was out.
His cord.
Oh, the cord was out. Oh, listen, I thought you were trying to go full CNN on us right there.
Secret Service, man. Secret Service rank in the building.
Adam, what are your thoughts?
Secret Service rank.
Kevin Warren's telling me not to say this. No,
right, he's got a direct line.
The thing that I love. Now, obviously, and we saw this with Matt Eberflus, is they come in here and they're like, "Oh, we hate the Packers," blah blah blah, and you're like, "Okay, well that's a crib sheet that you're handed." That you're like, okay, like here's your go-tos. Like, I love deep dish pizza. I don't put mustard on a hot dog. Pick a baseball team and say that you hate the Packers.
Facts.
And it's so manufactured, like looking back at Matt Eberflus now, you're like, it's so cornball to be like, I hate the Packers. Like, of course you're going to say that. I love, and of course the guy. So my condo complex. Now here comes the guy with the lawnmower. Like, you see me doing this. No, leave me alone on Wednesdays.
He's pulling right up to the window, too.
Right to the window. He's waving at me.
Looking in at you doing
Hey, Adam.
Asking you about Ben Johnson.
But he's a Lions fan, so he's upset.
Right when I'm trying to get this angry mode.
He's really grinding it into the grass here. But it's
man.
he gets mad at me because like the kids run around this. There's a green belt out here too, which is what they're mowing, and it's worn out because we have like a Friday night lights, and like somebody was complaining about the Friday night lights, and I'm like, yeah, my soccer team's been out here too, so like, yeah, like it's okay. But the thing that I loved, going back to my point, the thing that I absolutely loved is that he did not say anything about the Packers or too much about the Packers. He talked about LaFleur.
Yep.
He specifically was so specific calling out LaFleur. The only thing I would have added is because I felt this when I was watching the Packers lose in the playoffs again. I'm like, did they get a Groupon for like eyebrow teasing? Because some of the assistants have the coiffed eyebrows too. I'm like, is this a thing? Like, this is like you hear about like, hey, the quarterback got the offensive lineman gloves or whatever. And it's like, he's like, Matt LaFleur got everybody eyebrow threading for Christmas. Like, congratulations, guys. I love that he called him out specifically. Yeah. Specifically called him out.
Yeah. I mean, he and not just him, he kind of, the three points he made in terms of why he chose Chicago, right? Number one was obviously said family, going to the Cubs series. He talked about a loaded roster, but like you said, to your point, Adam, he said, yeah, I love beating Matt LaFleur twice, but he also talked about all the other great coaches, in the NFC North. And it kind of like put him on notice, like, okay, Dan Campbell, you're my guy, you were a mentor, but guess what? I'm here in Chicago because I wanted to stay in one of the best divisions in football. So I'm excited to see how that all plays out and looking at the future, right? When you look at the Bears, what they have in terms of where they pick in the draft and the draft capital and everything that they have at their disposal this offseason, what's your opinion in terms of where they're going to go, with this first pick?
I know. Are we already talking about the Boise State running back and this is our Jahmyr Gibbs and all that stuff? Yeah. I felt when the Lions made the pick for Jahmyr Gibbs that it was a luxury that they could afford because they were so good on the offensive line. I honestly thought in that moment, because we were coming into that was the draft with Jalen Carter. And I thought like, hey, the Lions have built a pretty good culture. Jalen Carter might not throw them off and like could end up being a really good player for them. Now, obviously, Jahmyr Gibbs has been fantastic. Could you say that they could have had both? Maybe, not knowing the way draft points work, but still, it was a luxury pick for them that they could afford. Like going back, Pat, what you were talking about with the crocodile punter is Torrey Taylor is that might have not been the time to go draft a punter in the 4th round when you're still trying to get better on the offensive and defensive line. Similarly, when you're picking 10th, it has to be an impact player on the offensive or defensive line. And whether you get Trey Smith in free agency, whether you bring in 5 guys in free agency, it doesn't matter. If you get the opportunity to get a cost-controlled player who can be an elite level talent on either one of the lines, again, we'll see how this shakes out. Still getting, like, I haven't even approached my draft prep yet, but I understand what positions need to be drafted. And honestly, as much fun as it would be to think about drafting a running back, it's a little too early for that. I felt like we indulged ourselves last year when we took Roma Dunze. I signed off on that because I'm still a big believer in Roma Dunze, which again, this is the hilarity of everything about what happened this season that people are like, oh, you wasted this. You drafted the wrong quarterback. You did. And I go, okay, hold on. We drafted a quarterback that threw for 3,500 yards and 20 touchdowns. You know how good that is in Chicago? And he did it with 3 different offensive coordinators and like all kinds of stuff going on. Like the fact that he did what he was able to do, given the circumstances, you can make a case that he is the rookie of the year. And by the way, and again, I know I've made this point numerous places, numerous occasions, Caleb never got credit for leading 2 what should have been winning drives against the Commanders, a winning drive against the Packers the first time, a potential winning drive against the Vikings. That one's, it could have gone either way. I understand. We got to overtime. It was a lot of things went our way, but he still did it. The first time against the Lions, like he didn't get credit for that to the point of like, had they, and again, everything works out for a reason. I do know that like looking back at the Washington game now and saying like, it sucked, but it's kind of like if your faucet's leaking and you're like, okay, I got to go fix this. I got to go change a washer. And then you're like, oh, wait, we got dry rot. we got to remove the wall and we got to redo it. Like that helped the Bears pull back and look at, hey, the foundation is
exposed
rotten.
everything.
Thankfully, because like if we had not had that 5-2, we were getting so close to a point of where you would have been able to justify, like, hey, like maybe we go, like we won 8 games, like, you know, like it would have been justifiable.
Yeah.
I'm glad that everything happened the way that it did. So I think for us, though, we still need to keep that prudence, that presence of mind to now look and say, hey, as much fun as it would be to get Austin in here or whatever, hey, let's not screw this up. Best lineman available, whether it's an edge rusher or a guy to protect the quarterback, that has to be the focus. And if we get later in the draft, and I really like the ASU running back. I apologize. I have not. This is now when I start watching college football. So because now that you get to a certain age and you're like, I coach both my kids' soccer teams. So like, I don't spend my Saturdays watching college football like I used to. I now have to sit here and like reverse engineer it, be like, who's good? I'm going to go back and watch a bunch of ASU games. I'm going to go back and watch a bunch of Boise State games. The only game that I watched live last year outside of the playoffs was the Ohio State Michigan game. And for somebody who that's the only game that I watched in college football, and you're like, who won the national championship?
Yeah.
Why were they even in the playoffs?
Yeah.
How was that?
Right.
How was that Ohio State team in the playoffs?
Yeah.
No, you talk about Cam Scatterbo there, but like I think what has me the most excited here, and I've said this, I'm coming in cautiously optimistic. We've been here before. We've had this day. We've had the exciting head coaching day.
Be optimistic. Come on, join me. Get to my level.
He changed the narrative, Adam, because before you came on, he was all excited. He's talking about getting a replica Super Bowl ring.
I'm too over the top. I get it.
Come on, Pat. I was going to don't
people
bring me in this equation.
I'm too over the top. I make people pessimistic.
Listen. We're not gonna start lying on this podcast now.
Come on, Pat.
there was no. I've maintained that this is exactly what I wanted the Bears to do. Yeah. This is exactly how I wanted them to go about it. We saw something that is exactly what I've wanted the McCaskies to do forever, which is they're spending money not just on the head coach, but also on the coaching staff, also bringing in a experienced DC, bringing in a great special teams coach, possibly bringing in another piece that would hurt the Detroit Lions in the division. And so you're going to have this expensive staff in place. I love what the Bears are doing, but I'm coming in cautiously optimistic because we have had this day. We've had the exciting day. We've had the day that we feel this is where change happens. And then 3 years later, we're sitting there looking at the guy going, I can't believe that we let you in the front door to start this off. The one thing that does give me a little bit more, though, that this is real from Ben Johnson is he's looking at this Bears team with all of the flaws already understood. He knows how he beat them. He knows how he attacked them. He knows what, and he said on Carmen and Yurko today, listen, the offensive line was a major problem, and it's something that we will address. My point that I wanted to get to, and the question I want to ask you is, Trey Smith is the hot name right now. I see the smile coming on your face right now. I would love to have a guy like Trey Smith in here. But again, I'm a Bears fan that's been through this. Usually when good football organizations let good offensive linemen go, we don't know something. Are you confident in a Trey Smith if he is made available? And is that somebody you'd want to see protecting Caleb?
Absolutely. Absolutely, all the way across the board. And I think that we should feel confident, as Virginia just celebrated a birthday here recently.
102.
Like, they want to win.
Yeah.
And they know, like, listen, you're not taking the money with you. You know what I'm saying? Like, I know it's callous to kind of say that, but it's like, what are we doing here? The NFL is making money hand over fist. And we're going to be very close to a point where the McCaskey family is going to be making a boatload of money because they're going to own a stadium. They're going to own the land. They're going to own the land that's developed around it. And not only are they going to be hosting Super Bowls, Final Fours, all sorts of things, that they can look at this and be like, you know what, we can spend a little bit of money. It kind of reminds me of the situation the Dodgers are in right now, Where the Dodgers, I know that it's a big deal about deferring money. And we're like, why doesn't everybody defer money? It's because the Dodgers own the land. They own their TV network. They own all this stuff. They're never going to go broke. Similarly, the Chicago Bears should never go broke.
Yeah.
It should never be. It is never going to be an issue for them. And it's only going to continue to increase. NFL revenues are continuing to increase. They're going to add an 18th game. They're adding another international game. Like everybody's going to play an international game. Like the money is going to be there. So I think that as long as they can tighten the belt right now, and I know it made George very uncomfortable, but keep going. Don't stop now. It is like the first time that I had to convince this is how old I am. I had to convince my dad to let me have Air Jordans as a kid, like the original ones, the original black and red ones that look super ugly now comparatively. But at the same time, like now that he's come to this point, it's like we gotta finish the story, George. It's good. Like you've done a great job. Let's finish this. You bought the land for the stadium. You're gonna do that. You gave into Hard Knocks. You've added all this stuff to the staff. Let's keep going. Let's not stop here. And if it takes a Trey Smith, if it takes a couple of extra dollars in free agency, we need to spend that money. And I think that for everybody who's pessimistic, like we should have a renewed optimism that George really wants this done. And he wants it done for Virginia. We want to make sure that she gets it done. We want to win for her. Like it meant a lot to me too. Like when DJ Moore has tweeted out twice, well now a couple of times, since everything went down with Justin and whatever. And one of them was wishing Virginia McCaskey a happy birthday. Like this kind of like that kind of stuff. Like I'm like, oh, that's cool. Like I think these guys, I think it's a big thing. So you know what? Let's get it done. Like let's not stop now. We've done such a great job. Let's get it done. I hear
you, Adam, but it was a big thing 10 years ago when George took over. Is what he said at the press conference. This is the first time where he's putting money behind his words.
Yeah.
That's why to me this is a situation that I believe a little bit more.
Yeah, and I think it's refreshing to see a head coach right at a press conference, and like you said, Adam, not just going up there talking about just why he left Chicago. Yeah, we're going to beat Green Bay, but he talked about the building as a whole, right? Something about in terms of you're going to develop players, and he talked about yes, we want to develop the O-lineman that we have currently on the roster, but he talked about the building, right? It starts in the building, and he talked about everybody and everything in this building has to be geared toward our players. Not just our players, but in terms of them winning. Like everything in the building has to have an arrow pointed toward winning. And when you have a coach that understands, like, to win in this league, you got to have everything in order. That just, gives me, more confidence in him leading the charge, in which, a lot of coaches, if they come up there and they give you that coach speak, when they took the podium at their initial press conference and you're looking like, I don't know. But, he has that quiet confidence because, like he said, he spent 7 years in Miami, or I think it was 7 years in Miami, and also 6 years in Detroit. Yeah. He's seen the good, and he's seen the bad, and he's helped develop the good. So he's seen what success looks like, and he knows, like he said, where the pitfalls are, where the red flags are. So for me as a former player, hearing that from a coach address the building, what has gone on in the building, and understands how to overcome those things and help players be successful, I think that's a great thing, a great sign.
And you know what? I think being a member of the Lions organization is a huge thing because, again, I know Sheila took over, but it's a similar situation with the Detroit Lions, a family-run team that's one of the charter members going back to the Portsmouth Spartans that's been around forever, did not have a lot of success, made Barry Sanders retire early, made Calvin Johnson retire early, burned through head coaches. The Matt Patricia thing was awful. People even thought that Dan Campbell was a joke when he was hired. So don't tell me that they suddenly changed their tune. No, they made the best of their situation. So Ben Johnson does have that. Like, he knows what it's like working for a family, doing what it is. And I hope that at some point we're going to be like, well, now that George is in charge, like once George took over, like I made a couple of mistakes, but it is so different because, like, for so many years, like I go back to the Tressman thing where you're like, Bruce Arians was right there coming off a coach of the year. Like he was the coach of the year. There was no like ambiguity of like, well, this guy, will it translate? Will he be a good, like, Like he's shown it. He's the reigning coach of the year, and you're getting an opportunity. And they wanted Mark Trestman. And then John Fox was a disaster. But John Fox was the most never had hired a retread coach in history. John Fox was the one that we're bending the that's where we break that streak. Like whatever. Like, hey, I've never been to Las Vegas. But the first casino I want to walk into is Circus. Like nobody's ever done that. Like, don't do that. There's other places you can go to Circa. It's much better. And then I'll be honest with you. I really liked Matt Nagy, and I thought that Matt Nagy was going to be fun, and I thought he was going to do a lot of creative things. But again, not calling plays for Andy Reid kind of was a detriment. And okay, that didn't work. Okay, that's fine. I think this is so much different because we have a guy who understands what it's like to be a coach on a team that's run by a family. He's called plays. He knows the division. He's got his ducks in a row. He's organized. There's believability. There's credibility. That's why this feels so different. And it also comes from our ownership group, which again has paid the money instead of taking the cheap way out or what Bill Polian thinks this guy can coach. No. This was the consensus for the last 2 seasons. The consensus, this is the top candidate out there. And again, this isn't a guarantee that it's going to work. But the Bears process during this situation cannot be questioned. They did everything correct with the quarterback, with the coach, and now it's incumbent on these human beings to go out there and get it done. But they've done everything that they can to put them in a position to succeed.
Adam, were you like me when they announced the everybody who was going to be a part of the coaching search, and you're just like, Polian's name better not be on here. I swear to goodness. I better not see a Polian. I don't want to see Ernie Accorsi. You better not be on this list. Like, we've had so many of those names. It's just like, this was the reason that you went with him because, like, he didn't like the young guy coming in with Crown Royal. He wasn't even young, really, if we're talking about Bruce Arians, but he didn't like the guy coming in with the Crown Royal bag in the car with the
ain't like the Kango hat.
And the Kango?
The Kango, baby. You should have hired him off the hat, the swag, the confidence. Like,
just the way that our lives would be different right now. Like, who knows? I mean, I don't know. Did we lose in 2009? Was it 2009, 2012? Or a couple like, you just look at any of those years. Like, Jay Cutler probably plays longer. Jay Cutler's more successful.
Well, Jay Cutler wouldn't have been here. That's why they didn't get Bruce Arians, because Bruce Arians was like, we're getting rid of Cuddy. There's no way he's on my team.
He wasn't going to deal with that. He wasn't going to deal with that.
All right, fair enough. But whoever he would have brought in would have been successful.
100%.
So it would have been fine.
Adam, we appreciate you coming through, man. Appreciate you taking the time out to come on the podcast. Make sure that you guys check in with Adam everywhere. He is the #1 Bears fan in the national media, always representing us very well. Adam, let the people know where they can catch you next and where they can find you on socials.
Oh, thank you so much. You can find me on X or Twitter or whatever you call it, at Adam Rank. My Instagram, there's a kid in England squatting on Adam Rank. So I got to be Adam Rank NFL. TikTok's back, so I'm on, but everything else is just Adam Rank. And of course, the Sick Podcast. We're going to be doing our usual show on Wednesday evening, depending on when you're listening to this. It'll be archived on YouTube as well. And then I'll be back on Friday. I'll do a show on Friday, picking the conference championship games. I'm going to try to get on either Stacey Dales or Mike Garafolo. I want Mike Garafolo on because he's a little hatery for my taste, but I need that. I need somebody to like go against in that spot. And then I'll be back on the NFL Network Friday night for the Insiders. And so it'll be a lot of fun, and I'll be around. And guess what? I won't be wearing Lions gear or doing anything else, promoting any other teams. The only other, it's a story for another day, but I'm always wearing Bear stuff. So that's just me.
We love it, Adam. You're always doing great work, man. So it was a pleasure doing the pod with you. Thank you for your time, man. And like we always tell everybody, bear down. Baby.
Major bear down. Shout out to Ben Johnson ending every press conference with a bear down. Dude, that's what I like to see. He's bought in. I like it. He got it from Caleb. That little Caleb, little Bears, little bear claw. Yeah, I mean, I like it. If I see Ben Johnson throw up a bear claw, we may be in Super Bowl territory now.
A couple of weeks ago, people thought the bear claw, like somebody was commenting on something, and they're like, "Hey, the claw is cringy." But I think the claw is cool again now because of Ben Johnson.
Yeah. Hopefully, Caleb Williams and Ben Johnson can make it cool. Wins make everything cool.
Yeah, we might actually take the North and never give it back this time.
Yeah, we'll
right?
see. We'll see. That'd be nice to be proven true on.
Right.
For Adam Rank and Jason McKie, ladies and gentlemen, it's your boy Pat the Designer back at it again. Make sure that you tune in to the podcast on all podcast platforms and, of course, over on YouTube, and stay tapped in with us over here at ESPN 1000. Y'all stay safe out there, Chicago. Bear down. One love. Peace.